Okay, I'd like to bring the meeting to a session if I can, and welcome everyone to the AGM for the 2019-2020 school year and our organizational year. Like all AGMs, there's a different. I'm the current chair, so I'll be vacating this seat very, very shortly and allowing our director to assume the chair. But before that happens, again, welcome. We have to adopt the agenda as presented. Can I hear a mover?
So moved. Wayne.
Moved by Wayne, seconded by Tom. All in favor? Aye. Those against? Motion carries. Now you'll notice within the binder that was circulated before, the minutes for the previous meeting. This is for information only, and any questions we can address after the proceedings. I will now turn the floor over to Tony as director to facilitate the next steps.
Okay, thank you, Granway. The procedure for the election of officers has been distributed to all trustees, and these procedures are directly from the Newfoundland Labrador English School Board bylaws. The first task will be to appoint scrutineers. I'd like to welcome a younger version of Ian Wallace, Mr. Justin Hewitt. Ian's appearance was much similar to yours before he became parliamentarian. But it was only 3 meetings, but anyway. Welcome, Justin. And so Bernadette, our internal solicitor, would also perform the role as a scrutineer. So the 2 scrutineers are our parliamentarian, Mr. Hewitt, and our second scrutineer is our solicitor, Ms. Bernadette Cole-Genron. If I could ask for a motion to proceed with election of officers as per our procedures outlined in our bylaws. Eric, second by John. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, so just to reiterate the rules, so everyone's aware, the elections shall be made by secret ballot. Candidate may be acclaimed or must attain a majority vote to be elected. The chair shall provide opportunity for nominations from the floor. There will be 3 calls for nominations for each position, after which the election chair will declare nominations to have ceased. Each nomination from the floor must have a mover and a seconder. Each nominee must agree to accept the office if elected. Each nominator may speak on behalf of the nominee, not exceeding 5 minutes. Each nominee may have an opportunity to speak, not exceeding 5 minutes. In the case of a single nomination for a position on the executive committee of the board, the candidate shall be declared by acclamation. In the case of more than 1 nomination for a position on the executive committee of the board, a vote by secret ballot shall be conducted, and the person receiving the majority of the votes shall be declared elected. Where a vote is conducted and no candidate receives a majority of votes cast, the candidate receiving the fewest votes shall be dropped from the ballot and another vote will be conducted. If there is a tie after 3 such successive ballots for position on the executive committee of the board, the names of the nominees shall be placed in a box and 1 name only shall be drawn for the position. The person whose names are drawn will be declared elected. The ballots shall be ordered to be destroyed by resolution of the board. Okay. So we'll proceed with the position of the office of chair. Nominations are requested and must be accepted for the position of chair. So we'll open the floor, call for nominations for the position of chair. Do I have any nominations? Trustee Gill nominates Mr. Price, Granway Price, and do we have a seconder? Seconded by Mr. Lester Simmons. Okay. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair?
I'll nominate Trustee Aspel.
Kevin nominates Trustee Aspel. Seconded by Raymond. Are there, I should have also have asked, sorry, I'll go back one.
Yes.
Mr. Price, do you accept? Yes, okay. Seconded. Trustee Aspel, do you accept the nomination for the position of chair? Okay, are there any other nominations for the position of chair?
Nominate Tom Kendall.
Trustee Cullen nominates Tom. Is there a seconder? Okay. Trustee Ryan? Yes, it did. Do you accept, Trustee Kendall? Yes, I do. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? And finally, are there any other nominations? Okay. Nominations have ceased for the position of chair, and we will now proceed to secret ballot for the 3 positions, before which we have to have, in the order of the nominations, we'll hear from the nominee and the acceptor of the nomination. So, for Mr. Price, who was the nominator? Okay. Gail, would you like to speak on behalf of Mr. Price?
Thank you. I nominated Mr. Price today because I believe that he can steer a difficult ship. I believe that currently he is, or has been, steering us in the best direction that could possibly be. I believe that he has negotiated some pretty turbulent waters with respect to our dealings with AG and government. I believe that he's moved us forward on many fronts that we may not have achieved otherwise. And I know that everyone around this table has their good points and their bad points. And I, in this instance, feel that his good outweighs his bad. Thank you.
Trustee Price,
How can you say anything else? Lester, for the seconding of my nomination and your commentary, Pam, on my behalf. I also thank the board for the support that's been offered to me in the past in this position, because again, the board is the one that makes decisions, and once the board makes decisions, it's my role to implement those decisions and support it to the best of my ability, and I certainly do not mind doing that particular role. As Pam eloquently articulated, everyone brings some strengths, and people bring some areas that we would like to be better at. And obviously, from my point of view, I'm partly because of the back. I'm not the #1 communicator, but I too tend to communicate quickly and to a point and to a purpose. And I will continue to do that, and I'll certainly try to improve my communication capacity. Our next year, this is the last year of our mandate under the current elected process, and we've got some pretty significant things on the horizon. We certainly have to figure out a way to meet the AG requirements through our financial management system, not only from the financial side, but on the human resource management, the asset recording, and all those things. And I think we've done a good bit of work over the last little while to set the direction in terms of where we need to go. Now we just got to make it happen, and I think that's a significant piece of work that I wouldn't mind putting some weight behind over the next 12 months. The other piece is the reform of the Education Act. It's going to come fast and furious, and I think we do need to pay attention to it, so that we do, if we see things that need to have a little bit of further address, that we do that in a timely fashion. So I'm interested in that. But fundamentally, it comes back to this, and I'm not the only one at this table. Everyone around the table is saying it's about students, and we've got to figure out a way to do more with the resources that we have. We have to come up with a balanced approach to applying these resources so it makes the biggest possible impact for kids. Number of the areas that I specifically think we can do more in is in the area of social technology, cell phones in schools. The reality that these are both positive and negative, we need to do a little bit more work on how we try to take away some of the negative associations with having so much technology in the classroom that allows and contributes to some of the violence issues that we're seeing seeing within the schools today. So I'm really interested in, over the next 12 months, doing something in this regard. Outside of that, everyone around the table knows who I am, and I will commit to keep doing the same thing or similar things that I'm doing now to try and make sure this ship moves forward in a positive direction. And again, thank you for your support up to this point.
Thank you, Trustee Price. The second individual nominated was Trustee Aspel, and I believe the nominator was Trustee Ryan.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've known Trustee Aspel now ever since I got on this board, but I've known her in other capacities. She's a member of many community organizations, and I've seen her leadership in many different roles. She is, like many of us around this table, she is a natural leader. And in a time when some of this board feels that we need a change, perhaps the change should be Jennifer. She will bring an awful lot to this table. She believes very passionately in students first. And we all saw that with the goings-on at Mobile and how it played itself out. But that doesn't mean that Jennifer has in any way taken a back seat and put students second. Students are still first. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what we're here for.
Thank you, Trustee Ryan. Trustee Aspel?
Thanks, Tony. Thank you to Kevin and Ray for the nomination. I don't have anything prepared. It was unexpected. We're going into our last year of our mandate. I do think that we've accomplished a lot of good things. I do think there's still quite a bit of work to do. And I think that in order for us to fulfill our mandate and to achieve that work, we all have to be working as a partnership in a collaborative nature. We had to be very professional in our approach. And I am a firm believer that communication is a critical part of that. I have no trouble communicating, as you all know. But apart from that, I guess we're all passionate about education. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And I feel that my approach to education and how we can improve it and how we can implement programming and how we can make change and how we can adapt to the times and how we can deal with new issues as they arise is that we always have to be very investigative in terms of how we learn what's presented to us, how we interpret it, how we have a dialogue about it. We only meet 6 times a year. We have a number of meetings in between, but I do think that we all have to be engaged 100%. And everyone has to feel as though they are engaged 100% in order to give their best effort. And I think that we work well together and we need to move forward. And I do have a lot of good leadership qualities that I could bring to the table. So thanks again for the nomination. And thank you for your service over the last 3 years. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Aspel. And the third nominee was Trustee Kendall, and the nominator, I believe, was Trustee Culleton.
Thank you, Mr. Stack. Nominated Tom, it's the last year of our mandate, and I think that to say that there is a quest for desire for change is an understatement. I think that we need to have a focus on communication, and that seems to be a very important topic to people around the table, and as well as accountability and transparency. These are all the buzzwords that I would like to see put in action, and you can't just talk about that. You need to have the experience, and I think that all the candidates today have that. But I do think that Tom has been on different boards, and we need to look at look at change. Like I said, the last year of our mandate, let's see if we can exact some change here and make a really big difference in the direction that we're taking as a board.
Thank you, Trustee Culliton. Trustee Kendall?
Thank you very much, Tony, and thank you for my nominees. It's been 3 years, and we have to look back on the reasons, I think, now in our final year why we ran for the board in the first place. There's no doubt that we're struggling as a new board to find some purpose and direction as elected trustees. I think we're still struggling with our roles, and we need more clarification in that regard. We seem to be down at the operational level all the time. That is not the role of a governing body. The role of a board is one of oversight and governance, and that's where we need to be. I'm not going to give you a long speech. We should be doing things differently. We should not be doing things that boards have been doing for the last 10 years or more. Times have changed, and as trustees, we should be changing with the times. I want to change the status quo. We should be moving forward, and I can do that only with your support. So if elected chair, I will be very open to changing the way we do things. There certainly would be more of a team approach among all of us around the table, and I just ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kendall. Okay, if we could have the distribution of the ballots. If we could have the collection of the ballots, and I'd ask the scrutineers to exit the room with the ballots and then come back and report to me the result. Okay, we have a clear majority winner, and the chair is Mr. Gronway Price. Okay, congratulations, Chair. The office of the Vice Chair will now open nominations from the floor for the office of Vice Chair. Trustee George?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Wayne Lee.
Do I have a seconder? Mr. Bennett, second. Trustee Lee, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Call for, are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Trustee Burden?
Mr. Stack, I'd like to nominate Trustee Hayward Blake.
Trustee Blake. Do I have a seconder?
Seconder.
Trustee Whittle. Trustee Blake, do you accept the nomination? Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Trustee Bennett. Trustee Aspel, do I have a seconder? Trustee Gill seconds. Trustee Aspel, do you accept? Okay. Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, nominations cease. So before we proceed with the balloting, we'll ask in the order of the nominations for a short address. So, Trustee George, you nominated Trustee Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I place before you the name of the current Vice Chair of the Board, Wayne Lee, for your consideration. We all know Wayne as an experienced educator, I guess, and an experienced administrator. And I guess for all the good things that have happened within our board, Wayne has been there. He's, I think he has a good working relationship with the chair, and I think his voice, experienced voice, would be an asset to the executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee George. Trustee Lee.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, John and Ray, for the nomination. Also, thank you for electing me last year. It's been an interesting year, to say the least, but very fulfilling as well. When I ran for this position last year, I did articulate two things that I was hoping to work on. I'm sure you remember exactly what they are, but just in case you don't, I'll repeat them. One was to put the organization, back on a level footing. We had at the time, as you recall, a lot of temporary and acting positions. And while I was not directly responsible for this, we were responsible for putting it back on an even keel. And in fact, Tony and his team reorganized, as you well know. One thing, and I haven't discussed this with the staff, so it's not from them, it's from me, but I still think we still have too much concentration of responsibilities with a small number of people that has to be looked at in future. The other thing was the functionality of the board. The fact of the matter is that that is still a work in progress, but it's progress, there's no doubt. When we arrived here some 3 years ago, we arrived with the same intention, but with different ways of getting there. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not dysfunctionality, that's simply disagreement. If you've gone to the House of Assembly or the House of Parliament in Ottawa or the mother of all parliaments in Westminster and seen the behavior there, they make us look pretty tame. We don't have to join hands and sing Kumbaya to get things done. We can disagree, and we will, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we have to stop beating ourselves up simply because we disagree. As long as what comes out the other end is what we want, which is the betterment of education in the province. And I know we're all here for that, and I'd ask you to support me in that. This is our last year. We've accomplished quite a bit. We have functioning committees. The schools are open. We're showing progress in many ways, and I'd like to continue to be part of the leadership role for that, so I ask you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lee. Trustee Burden.
Thank you, Tony. People of Newfoundland and Labrador have just been through 2 general elections back in May. We had a provincial general election, and just about a week ago we had a federal general election. And like a lot of people, I watched a lot of the media coverage leading into it. and the reporter sticks a microphone in somebody's mouth, and in somebody's face rather, and asks the question, what are you looking for in this election? And the one word that people always use is change. And I think it's a little bit cowardly, because a lot of the times the answer isn't substantiated beyond that. Over the last 3 years, we've seen relatively little change in the leadership at this organization, at the board level. And I believe 3 years into a mandate, that's probably not a good thing. I believe that progressive organizations and organizations who want to affect good policy should be willing to change as we go, and I believe it's a sign of maturity. Trustee Blake and I have known each other for 3 years. Like all trustees, you size each other up and stuff like that. But over the last 3 years, I've grown to respect him, grown to respect his analytical approach and his demeanor. And he always presents a level-headed approach. He always presents thoughts that have been well thought out, and I believe is the change that we need. I believe that 3 years into our mandate, we probably need to hit the refresh button and bring in a new set of eyes and a new set of ears to begin to transform the leadership at the board level. And I trust that you support Trustee Blake as well.
Thank you, Trustee Burden. Trustee Blake.
Thank you. And thank you, Scott and Peter, for nominating me. And I guess I offer myself in that sense, the sense of renewal, because I think 3 years into this mandate, I believe that there's sufficient talent around the table that each of us, I think, deserve to have a role to play within this organization. So therefore, that's my reason, I suppose, for offering myself. I think I have a variety of experiences that I bring to this board, having sat on other boards like the Mun Board of Regents, and in my own area I sit on local boards. I've recently chaired the ad hoc committee on bylaws and constitution, which I think worked well. I think in my role as a trustee, I think I've tried to be a voice of reason, and I think I've brought forward certain items that I think has enhanced the board. I think I pushed for the school bus safety program when we were in Goose Bay, that I think very effectively worked its way through this province in September. I was certainly an advocate for the youth, for our students in Indian River High, and their difficulties in addressing the issues of the LGBT community. I certainly have been an advocate for the Indigenous people in the province and making sure that the Indigenous people have been included on our agenda, and I think we've seen quite a lot happen in that regard. Just a little thing, but you know, I always wanted to have the trustees profiled, and my suggestion that the trustee name be added to the school board, or I'm sorry, to the individual school website, I think provides us a recognition within our community. I think that we've had a lot of success within the NLESD, and I think a lot of the individual groups, individual committee work that's been happening has been very, very successful. But in terms of my advocacy moving forward, I think that I mentioned to the Minister this morning the international education piece, which I feel is probably outside of our domain, but I think it's something that offers some excellent possibilities, and I hope the Minister will at least look into it. But I think I'm an advocate for innovation and change, and you know, some of you have heard me talk about Cook's Harbour and some of the possibilities there, but you know, passionate about CDLI, but really passionate about how we can use technology, and now we're embarking on another series of school reviews, and I'd like to think that technology will be an important part of that, and not simply the old model being reused, but shuffling around the schools. But I think using technology to further provide programming for students, I really want to be able to push the idea of the intermediate student programming. I do think that a large segment of our school population, those who are in grade 7, 8, and 9, are indeed being disenfranchised. And whether we're doing it to them or the world is doing it to them, but I think it's fair to say that the curriculum that we have in our junior high schools now is not engaging our students, and I think we need to move further with deep learning and to engage students and to make real learning experiences for them. So I'd like to find ways to, through the Programs Committee, which I think I've been fortunate enough to be a part of. We've done some fantastic work there, and maybe that's one of the things we can move forward. But I think I'd like to like the idea of bringing a modern approach to leadership, to be collegial, to be collaborative, and to be less adversarial around the table. I really think that there's a wealth of talent here. I think we have to harness that talent, and that's something I'd like to do. And my final point is I really think we need to take a look at recycling. I don't mean recycling trustees. I mean recycling of water and the items we serve our food in. We give our students an afternoon off to participate in a climate change demonstration, but we come here, we drink water out of bottles like this, we eat food out of plastic containers, and I think we have to set an example. And I think maybe what frustrates me most about the board is sometimes the model we use is not the model we want our children to follow. And I think we need to be doing more modeling and maybe starting with a recycling program for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Blake. Trustee Bennett.
Yes, I don't have a lot to say. The main thing I really want to impress on people is the hard work that Jennifer puts into this board and all the research into the issues that she does. Every time she comes here, she's totally prepared to debate anything or discuss anything. Besides that, her actions speak for themselves. She's been here for a number of years, and you all have seen her in action. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bennett. Trustee Aspel.
Thank you, Ray. And Pam, thank you for the nomination. I think I'd be a really good addition to the executive, and I think vice chair might be the right role. And the reason I think that is because we've talked numerous times today about, you know, the desire for change, the need for change, the want for change, the ability to change, those types of things. And I think everyone around this table would agree that Chair Price and I have somewhat of a different approach to things. And that might be a really good balance on the executive, that we each bring our own strengths. And then if there's areas that we, as an executive, feel had to be improved upon, then we got a balance. We got a balanced approach at the executive level. The other thing that I would bring to your attention is that I currently have children in the system. And I think that's extremely important, that we bring that knowledge to the table, that we understand what some of the challenges are today, that we have real life experiences that people are not afraid to share. You know, even when you talked about the use of cell phones in school, yeah, that's a real issue. And it's impacting a lot of things, mental health, the ability to focus. But then again, we use Google Classroom for quite a bit of stuff. So where do we find that balance? I feel as though I'm a very strong voice, but I don't represent one particular issue or one particular priority. Kevin talked earlier about how, you know, when the issue with the mobile system was on the table, you know, I could speak to it, I was involved with it, but I do feel that I take that on with just about everything that we do. And thank you, Ray, for acknowledging that. I said earlier that my approach was kind of investigative, but I guess it's really more analytical. And I feel if I'm going to make a decision on something, then I need to be informed, and we all should be informed. So, I think there's a lot of qualities. We all bring professional and personal qualities to this table. And I would welcome an opportunity to be the vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Aspel. So if I could ask for distribution of ballots now for the position of vice chair. So I realize this must be scintillating TV for those who are watching online. I am I'm completely inept at any musical capability, but if any of you are so inclined, go ahead. Trustees, if I could ask, does anybody have any objection to Elaine just going out and checking on things? You know, it's not they're out doing this. Elaine going out and just checking on things. Okay. All right. Okay. So we have a scenario where there is a no clear majority winner here. So there is a tie for the two lowest counts. So the way to proceed, we could do there's no contingency in the bylaw for this. So there's nothing clear in Robert's rules from our two lawyers. So I would suggest we simply do a revote and see if there's any change. The other way to do it, the other possibility, if you prefer, would be to apply the procedure where if there is a tie after so many votes, you do draw one name for the second person, and you would have to decide, is it the name you draw in the box, would it be the person that falls off the ballot or stays on? Right. So I think the way to proceed, unless there's any objection, we just simply try a revote and see if there's any movement. If there's not, then we'll have to revisit. Are we okay with that? just do a simple revote? Okay. We need to move this quickly, so maybe we can have 2 people hand out the ballots, might speed things up. So Lester, we're simply same three names, Lester. Okay, we're going to go to another round of voting, and it'll be between Trustee Lee and Trustee Blake. Can we have the ballots again? So we have to vote again? Well, we might.
Based on, they've got to do it twice for this particular piece, and then, so we do it.
Yeah, we need one more, yeah, if there's still a tie. Okay, congratulations, Trustee Blake, for the Vice Chair. Okay, we have to move now to the regions, beginning with Labrador. Nominations requested for the position representing the Labrador region on the executive. Call for nominations. Trustee Aspel nominates Trustee Bennett. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Kendall and Trustee Bennett, do you accept? Okay, understood. Are there any nominations for the position Labrador representative on the executive? Trustee Gill nominates Trustee Simmons and Trustee Tessier seconds. Trustee Simmons, do you accept the nomination? Okay. Sorry, there is no requirement for any other nominations as that you will be acclaimed in the position. And and therefore there's no need for a speech. Okay, moving to Western Region. Nominations open for the Western Region representative. Trustee George?
I nominate Wayne Lee.
Trustee George nominates Trustee Lee. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, Mr. Bennett. Trustee Lee, do you accept? Are there any other nominations for the position? Oh, Trustee Aspel.
I nominate Trustee Gill.
Do I have a seconder?
I second it.
Trustee Ayers. Trustee Gill, do you accept?
I do, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Trustee Kendall.
I nominate Scott Burden.
Do I have a seconder? Second by Trustee Culleton. Trustee Burden, do you accept? I do. Trustee Burden accepts. And I think we have no more requirement for nominations, as all personnel from Western Region is represented. Can we proceed with a short address? Trustee George.
Where I previously nominated Mr. Lee for the vice chair position, everything I said then applies now. Thank you.
Trustee Lee.
In a similar vein, I've already spoken. I would simply say I would like to continue as part of the executive. Thank you.
Trustee Aspel.
Told you I couldn't do that. Go ahead, talk again. I nominated Pam. I think that she's been very committed to the board, even though she's only been around with us for a short time. She's learned quickly. She participates in the conversation. She's an active trustee, and she's very interested in being a part of the executive. And I think we're very similar. And when I talked about what I could bring, I think she's also a parent with a child in the system, and she's been heavily involved. So I would like to see her as the representative for Western.
Trustee Gill.
Thank you, Jennifer. And who seconded? Eric. Thank you, Eric. Sorry. I was on the executive once before, by default at that time, because I think I was the only Western representative that was available. And I thoroughly enjoyed the work of that committee. In fact, I find that the most rewarding part of being a trustee is the committee work, because that's where we roll up our sleeves and really get things done. I kind of had hoped that there'd be two of us on the executive. And that's another reason why I think it's important to have some, at least
Gender diversity.
yeah. Well, thank you. Go ahead. No, I do think it's important to have as much diversity as we possibly can, and not because I'm treated any differently, but because I bring a different perspective to the table. And as Jennifer alluded to, I do have one child, and the guardian of two younger ones in the system. So I do have that firsthand perspective of a parent as well. Anyway, thank you for consideration.
Thank you. Trustee Kendall.
Thank you very much. I nominated Scott Burden. Scott's been on the executive before, and I think there's a need for Scott to be on the executive again. He certainly asked a lot of questions, and I think he's a good person too. He doesn't just accept the status quo. He challenges people, and I think he should be on the executive. So, Scott Burden.
Trustee Burden.
Thank you, Tom, and I'll be brief. Like I said before, when I spoke to Hayward's candidacy for vice chair, I think we're at a period in the life of this board and the life of this board's mandate that we need to take a different direction. And I did serve briefly on the executive committee before. Certainly would be interested in going back, especially now that we have some different composition in the leadership positions, and try to bring forth some progressive change. And again, like I said earlier, I believe it's a sign of a mature organization when you can have different people inserted in different roles. But I believe we accomplished something today that I'm not sure that a lot of us realize that we accomplished. And before lunch, we had an exercise that I don't know if we realized we're participating in or not, but we demonstrated what can happen when you don't communicate and what can happen when you do. We had one of the most productive working sessions this morning that we've been in when we talked about school review, because there was questions and answers, and because there was dialogue, and because everybody clearly communicated. And of course we had a session after that was a result of how we didn't communicate. And I believe in communication, I believe in asking the questions, and I believe in getting the answers. And don't believe in an abrasive or blunt approach, but I believe that that's the key to any relationship at a school board table or anywhere, is that communication is key. And I'll bring that to the executive committee if you so choose to elect me.
Thank you. May we have the distribution of ballots, please? Required additional ballot between Trustee Lee and Trustee Burden. Second ballot, another ballot between Trustee Lee and Trustee Burden. Congratulations, Trustee Burden. You're the Western representative. Okay, moving to Central. Open the floor for nominations for Central Region Executive Member. Central Region Executive Member. Any nominations?
I nominate Wentz.
Nominate Wince Carter. Any seconders for Wince Carter? Second by Trustee Ryan. Trustee Carter, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Are there any other nominations? Trustee Ayers? Trustee Kendall? Do I have a seconder? Trustee Kendall, or Trustee Culloden? Trustee Kendall, do you accept? Yes, I do. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, nominations closed for Central. If we could, Trustee Gill, do you want to speak to the nomination?
Thank you. I wrote down some words to describe my good friend Winston Carter. Reasonable, hardworking, dedicated, experienced, an excellent mentor, good-spirited, encouraging, and motivational. At times when I have been discouraged, not anything to do with the board necessarily, Wince is always there with an encouraging word. He believes strongly in what we do here around this table. And I just can't imagine not having him there. I trust him implicitly in any decision-making and any work that the executive committee does. And with the many, many years of experience he brings, I think he's a good choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Carter?
Thank you, Pam, for those kind words. What a difference a year makes. We've all done some excellent work. Thanks to all that I've chaired and participated in at the committee level, my colleagues at the executive, along with the district office staff. I am truly humbled to be part of an organization that is helping shape the future of our province through our children, tomorrow's leaders. I have been totally dedicated and committed to the roles that I have participated in during the past 3 years as a member of the Executive, Finance and Operations, along with the Ad hoc Committee, Bylaws and Constitution. I've always tried to make open and well thought out decisions, sometimes to my own detriment. A case in point, getting uninvited from the NLTA, BGM and President's Banquet. And once again, karma prevailed. On Tuesday of this week, representing you as a member of the School Board Teacher Liaison Committee, I once again had an opportunity to avenge my naysayers who welcomed me back into the meeting, and for that, I was much appreciated. So with your support, I would like to continue the work that I enjoy doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Trustee Ayers?
Yes, I nominated Tom, of course. There's a lot of good people around this table, and Tom, from my perspective, Tom is one of them. I've known Tom since 1969, right? But I'm not going to say a lot about him. However, we have served on a couple of committees together. Currently, we're both on the retired teachers, Newfoundland Labrador retired teachers executive, and I've seen the work that Tom can do there, and I know he's very interested in the board and doing the best he can for children of our province, and therefore I would nominate him. I'll let him say anything else for himself.
Thank you. Trustee Kendall?
Thank you very much, Eric, for the nomination. I really appreciate it. I've been serving on boards for a number of years now, and I would like to be on the executive of this board because I think there's a number of things that we need to do. We need to get our house in order. We seem to be as I said earlier, going down a road maybe that we shouldn't be going down. And we should be looking more at our role as trustees and the role of the board in terms of a governance role. And that's where I sit. And so thank you very much again, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Can we have the distribution of ballots, please? Congratulations, Trustee Carter. Moving now to Eastern Region. Open floor for nominations for executive member representation in Eastern Region. Trustee
I
Blake.
nominate
Trustee
Jennifer
Blake.
Aspel.
Trustee Blake first.
Oh, sorry.
Do I have a seconder for Trustee Ryan? Trustee Whittle? Trustee Ryan, do you accept? Trustee Ryan accepts. Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Jennifer Aspel.
Trustee Gill nominates Trustee Aspel. Do I have a seconder? Second by Trustee Tessier. Do you accept? Okay, thank you. Are there any other nominations for Eastern Region? Any other nominations for Eastern Region? Final, any other nominations for Eastern Region? Okay, nominations close, and may we distribute the ballots now for between Trustee Ryan and Trustee Aspel. Oh, sorry, we'll do the speeches first. Trustee Blake.
It was certainly my pleasure to nominate Kevin Ryan as a member of the Executive Committee. Known Kevin quite a long time. I think I first met him at a wedding many, many years ago. I've seen Kevin at work, both here as a member of this board and in his role as a school principal. But I'll speak to his role here at the board. Kevin has chaired the programs and HR committee for the past several years, and I think through that committee and through his leadership, we've done phenomenal work, yeoman work, I would think, in terms of the policies that we've advanced and the discussions and the discourse that we've engaged in for the students that we serve. Also, Kevin was a part of the ad hoc committee on the bylaws and the Constitution, and again, a very solid voice when we sit around the table. I think, to sum up, I think Kevin brings that rural experience to the table that we need. There's a lot of small K-12 schools in our regions, throughout our district, and I think that voice needs to be heard. So I certainly was happy to nominate Kevin as a member of the executive committee.
Trustee Ryan.
I don't know what I can say to top that. I've always been an educational leader and server. I've served on all kinds of committees, and not just in education, but throughout my community. It's what I do. And through my work as a school principal, through my work as the Principal Advisory Council, through my work as this board and the Programs and HR Committee, what I do is I lead people, I facilitate people to make decisions. And when that happens and I get good people behind me, a lot of things happen. Our Programs Committee has done, as Hayward has said, yeoman work. There have been a lot of things coming forward, and that's the record I stand on. I've been on executive for a whole month. Remember that? It's been an exciting time. It's been a wild month, and I'd like to continue that. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Gill.
I do think that Jennifer Aspel would be an excellent addition to the executive committee. I feel that her experience, her reasonableness, her courage at not pulling back from things that she believes in. I think that her experience on the governance committee that she chaired and led and did a whole lot of work on goes to show that she would really complement the committee in a very good way. Sorry, I'm not being very articulate. She's awesome.
Trustee Aspel.
Thank you, Pam. Kevin, you're after doing a lot of great work. I have great respect for you. Very worthy opponent. I think either one of us will be a really great addition to the executive. I've talked already about what I bring, and the only other thing I could add is prove that you're not an old boys club.
May we distribute the ballots, please? Congratulations, Trustee Ryan. Okay, so this brings us to the point where I call for a motion to destroy ballots. Moved by Trustee Kendall, seconded by Trustee Blake. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the committee membership of the two committees that we have right now. I'll read out the committees. Finance and Operations, Winston Carter, Wayne Lee, Tom Kendall, John George, Jennifer Aspel, Steve Tessier, Peter Whittle. Programs and Human Resources, Kevin Ryan, Scott Burden, Keith Culleton, Eric Ayers, Pamela Gill, Ray Bennett, Lester Simmons, and Hayward Blake. The suggestion now is to ask for a motion to recess, and we will you can do the committee appointments at a later time, either later today or tomorrow morning within your committees. Right. So can I ask for a motion to recess? So moved by Trustee Aspel. Thank you. We're in recess.
Okay, I think we're ready to go, and I do apologize right off the top for the delay. We had super excitement at our annual general meeting with voting for our new executive, and like all good things in an organization, there was lots of willing partners to step up, and obviously the elections took a little bit longer than we had anticipated or as our past experience. But those are the necessities when you're in a democracy to do those kinds of things, and I'm glad to say that we've completed that, and I'm also really appreciative of the people who have stepped up to the roles and the new roles that they're in, and I look forward to working again over the next year with the executive and with all the trustees around the table to try and get some of the agenda items that we've identified, either through our strategic plan or through the issues that come up on a day-to-day basis within this very dynamic school district. Without further ado, welcome to the people from the general community who have come out today to take or listen to the activity of our Board of Trustees. Appreciate the media coming out and giving us a voice within the community, of feedback to the community of the activities that we do and some of the important issues that are associated with our school district. Without further ado, can I get a motion to accept the agenda for our regular meeting? So moved by Trustee Kendall, seconded by Trustee George. All in favor? Those against? Motion carries. Okay. So the consideration of minutes. We have one set of minutes that have been pre-circulated to the full Board of Trustees. The board meeting minutes of September 7th, 2019. Are there any errors or omissions? As I said, these have been pre-circulated, and they not hearing anything or seeing anything. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes as presented? So moved by Trustee Bennett, seconded by Trustee Ayres. No corrections or amendments. Therefore, all in favor? Aye. Those against? Motion carries. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes that we school review, Holy Spirit High and Mount Pearl Senior High school feeder system review. We're going to get Mr. Pippi to do a brief update, and then we'll move to a motion that our new vice chair is going to promote to the board or move to the board.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Doug Pippi. I'm the Director of Educational Programs Provincial with the Newfoundland Labrador English School District. Thank you, trustees. Thank you, members of the public. We are here now to review the Holy Spirit High and Mount Pearl Senior High school system review. And this system review is coming about as a result of the construction of the new school in Paradise Intermediate, which is set to open in September of 2021. Here we see the current configuration of this school system. We have the yellow area here showing the catchment area of the Villanova Junior High and Holy Spirit High system, and the red zone here showing the catchment area of the Mount Pearl Intermediate and Mount Pearl Senior High system. This is the current configuration showing how exactly these schools feed together and the grade levels as well. As a part of all school reviews, we do public consultation. We did 2 rounds of public consultation using Thought Exchange. Excuse me. And the Thought Exchange program brought forward a number of concerns from the school community, which we have identified here. Here we see a themed list of concerns showing in the top 3 there, transportation, community schools, and class sizes we see there. So based on this first round of consultation, 3 possible options were put forward: minimal alteration, moderate alteration, and a significant alteration. Based on the concerns of the parent community, we decided to go with the minimal alteration to try to keep as much consistency as possible with the existing school structures. This is the planned configuration for both of these systems. As a result of this plan, there are a number of changes that will be taking place. Paradise Elementary becoming a K-5, with grade 6 moved to Paradise Intermediate, where they will remain until grade 9. And the other school that will be feeding into Paradise Intermediate will be the Octagon Pond Elementary. And in this slide, this is the current configuration. And here we can see how the new configuration will look. Paradise Elementary and Octagon Pond Elementary become K-5s, feeding into Paradise Intermediate, which becomes a 6-9. And of note, Mount Pearl Intermediate becomes 6-9, with Mount Pearl Senior High becoming a 10-12. There is a contingency plan in place to address enrollment pressures that are expected to be felt at Topsail Elementary and Villanova Junior High over the next 2 years, 2 to 4 years. The contingency plan would come into effect if those enrollment pressures are felt at those schools. We did a second round of consultation. You'll notice less participation in this consultation, but that was expected, as the schools that, the members of the school community that took part in the second round are the ones that are most affected by the planned configuration. And here we see the primary thoughts of this second round of consultation here. Of note, one of the main concerns was having a high school needed for Paradise, which has been in the district request for a number of years, but has been deferred indefinitely. So we're moving on here. All of the results of the both rounds of consultation are available in a public report at this link here, and this is also available on the district webpage as well. This is the current configuration of the elementary catchment areas, and it will remain the configuration after or if the motion is carried and Paradise Intermediate is opened as planned. And here we see the catchment area for Paradise Intermediate, which we see there is in purple. Here we see some of the effects of the proposed changes. Just like any time that a major change is made to an educational system, and in this case this change is necessary due to the fact that we are opening a new school, there are pros and cons to all changes. Again, this particular proposal minimizes the disruption for the majority of students, but does recognize the fact that there are some families that are negatively affected by this, and these families have been received direct communication from the school district, and we're working on contingency plans to alleviate their concerns as much as we can. Here we have the draft motion for review.
New Vice Chair, Hayward Blake, to read and move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I move the motion, I just want to thank Mr. Pippi and the parent community for their input in this process thus far. I'd like to propose this motion that Holy Trinity 9 to 12 in CBS, Mount Pearl Senior High 9 to 12 in Mount Pearl Intermediate, grades 6 to 8, Mount Pearl, Paradise Elementary, K to 6, Paradise, Octagon Pond Elementary, K to 6, Paradise. Whereas the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District is committed to providing the best possible educational programs for students, and whereas a reconfiguration of schooling in the Avalon region is required to achieve that objective. And whereas a reconfiguration of the school systems, including the feeder systems for Mount Pearl Senior High and Holy Trinity High, will address the addition of the new intermediate school to be opened in Paradise. And whereas a reconfiguration of these school systems is predicated on the opening of a new intermediate school to be located in Paradise. Be it therefore be resolved that upon institution of the new Paradise Intermediate School, grades 6 to 9, the following changes be made. Paradise Elementary will be reconfigured from a K to 6 to K to 5. Octagon Pond Elementary will be reconfigured from a K to 6 to a K to 5 school. Students from Paradise Elementary and Octagon Pond Elementary will attend the Paradise Intermediate School, grades 6 to 9, once opened. Mount Pearl Intermediate will be reconfigured from grades 6 to 8 to grades 6 to 9. Mount Pearl Senior High will be reconfigured from grades 9 to 12 to grades 10 to 12. I move that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Blake. Just making certain that it's Holy Spirit High in CBS is the thing, and just for confusion, so it's not Trinity, it's Holy Spirit High. Thank you. Motion is moved. Can I hear a seconder? Seconder by Steve Tessier. Any further discussion or question? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion carries. Thank you very much for that. The next piece of business that we will move to now is our director's report, and our director, Mr. Stack, will take over the proceedings. Thank you. See, even he needs a password to get anywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pleased to bring the director's report. Next slide, please, to this meeting today. Okay, so some of the topics I'm going to cover are some information at the district around social emotional learning, some initiatives in that regard, healthy eating, student transportation, out-of-province travel, some work we're doing with pre-service teachers, and a final note on coherence and deep learning, which is a special initiative of the district this year. Recently, we've been hearing a lot about violence in schools, in particular, most concerning would be gender violence. Peer violence amongst students and violence and harassment of any kind is a very important issue in our schools and our society at large. As a district, we certainly have a role to play in educating young people about the impact of intolerance, of hate, and violence. We are committed to implementing the provincial government's Safe and Caring Schools policy, working to prevent inappropriate behavior, but also responding vigorously when incidents are reported. We have our own specialized staff, and we are also engaged with a wide range of community partners to deliver programs and services designed to prevent violence and encourage healthy relationships. In fact, we've been doing a lot of work on this recently. The district is now better equipped to address issues of violence, inappropriate sexual behavior among students than ever before. We've got new legislation, new policy, new protocols, new data collection, and new curriculum. We recognize that we can always do it better, and these problems require a full community effort, full community support, to address, and we're always looking for ways to do that better. One of the first initiatives is the hazing under social emotional learning is hazing prevention, and this was developed in partnership with the Provincial Department of Children, Seniors and Social Development, School Sports Newfoundland and Labrador, and Sport Newfoundland and Labrador. It was piloted in select schools last year. This program is really leading in Canada right now. Hazing prevention education is necessary for students, staff, coaches, and others within the school community. A full day of training will be offered to representatives from schools grades 7 to 12, following a train-the-trainer sessions in schools. Be clear that hazing is not to be tolerated among student athletes, teams, clubs, or any organized group within school communities. Next slide. When violence does occur, the district has a number of violence prevention initiatives in place to address unique issues with each incident. There is the overarching Safe and Caring Schools policy, which the district is responsible for implementing. It is enshrined in the Schools Act. It outlines specific responsibilities and protocols, including positive behavior supports, codes of conduct, a bullying intervention protocol, as well as guidelines for 2S LGBTQ inclusive practices, and more. Now, what we use to monitor incidents of inappropriate behavior in school is software known as Review 360. So reports of violence in a school environment are communicated to the school administrator and recorded in Review 360. This includes incidents involving students with exceptionalities, which goes into documented behavior management issues. It's a tool designed to record behavior incidents and interventions at the school level and note trends for further reflection and action. It is further designed to inform individual school development plans with respect to preventing further incidents and responding appropriately if and when they do occur. We are on ongoing efforts to do more and more professional learning around Review 360 and its continued use across the district. Next slide, please. Go back one. Gender-based violence committees. A district-wide gender-based violence committee is also in place and actively looking at potential policies, protocols, and programming which can further address sexual incidents of a potential criminal nature, whether they occur on or off school property. Next slide. This year, a significant effort from our Safe and Inclusive team was the designing curriculum around consent. So in addition to the established health curriculum, the district has also developed a suite of lessons focused on consent education in grades 7 to 9 and some other lessons in grades 10 to 12 to be introduced this year. This was recently communicated to our administrators. We also have internally, we did a lot of work with our administrators in the last couple of years, devoting the better part of one day. In fact, we only get together with our administrators from the district level twice a year, and half of that time was devoted to this issue around gender violence. Administrators have been provided with updated guidelines for responding to a report of any gender-related violence that may occur in a school. Next slide. So there's a number of different policies as well that have come into effect over the last couple of years. The first is the refusal of school admission policy, which reflects what's in the new legislation. This addresses situations where a student's presence in the school could be detrimental to the physical or mental well-being of other students and staff and cannot be addressed through normal safeguards in the school. The criteria for enacting this policy involves there being a serious incident which allegedly occurred on or off school property, which law enforcement is investigating and or which charges have been laid. And the Schools Act was amended to allow this policy to be enacted. In our work with our administrators, we do emphasize that we, in these cases, particularly gender violence cases that may be particularly heinous, that our focus is on the victim and supporting the victim. Student suspensions, in accordance again with the Schools Act, principals have the authority to, of course, suspend a student from the school, and the district supports the suspension of students as required in response to inappropriate, disruptive, or dangerous student behavior. However, the district also recognizes the need to balance discipline and deterrence with interventions and programming to ensure a successful re-entry to school for the suspended student. We have our student athletics policy, and students who represent their school on athletic teams are required to sign a school athletic contract developed in partnership with School Sports Newfoundland and Labrador, which speaks to the consequences of inappropriate behaviors. Acceptable use of technology. This policy speaks to the appropriate and inappropriate use of technology within the school environment and includes a requirement for students and parents to sign on the acceptable use and technology agreement. We have a social media policy, and the district's social media policy includes terms and conditions for student use. There's a plethora of other relevant policies that we also have, and that would include protection of children and youth, traumatic critical incidents, student records, police investigation, bomb threats, weapons, lockdown, secure school, and media relations. So the legislation I spoke to earlier, the Change the Schools Act, but the current Schools Act also references other behavioral incidents involving students, which may involve law enforcement. So we do follow the Schools Act. We have to be cognizant of the Criminal Youth Justice Act, and we have to be cognizant of the Access to Information and Privacy Act. And for that reason, we're often asked by media or others with respect to particular incidents. We, because of these three acts of legislation, we do not speak to individual situations involving young people. Other programs, initiatives, next slide. We have something called Beyond the Hurt, and that's offered to grades 6 and 7 students. Beyond the Hurt is a student-led bullying and harassment prevention program coordinated through the Canadian Red Cross. We have Strive, Students Taking Responsibility in Violence Education. This is a program offered by the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary to empower students to take ownership of youth violence and work within their schools to find solutions to problems encountered. It helps inform students on the effects of their own behavior and that of other students. Next slide. We have a Hazy Love program, and that's offered to grade 7 students. Hazy Love is a program about making choices while affected by other influences. Relationships First. This is particularly a program we're getting more and more involved in. This is a restorative justice education program that focuses on addressing the harm caused by hurtful behavior or crime and holding the offender responsible for their actions and rebuilding relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. It provides an opportunity for the parents directly affected to identify and address their needs as well. In the social media and internet safety, we recognize that there's an increasing challenges and pressures facing students from social media and the internet. The district provides teachers with age-appropriate internet and social media safety lesson plans. These plans are designed to ensure students receive a foundational level of instruction on the elements of digital citizenship and to help them make good decisions in real life and online. All ISMS lessons are reviewed annually to ensure they address current issues. We have a particular, as well, LGBTQ or 2S LGBTQ focus. And the reason for that is this is serious business. Students that present as 2S LGBTQ are particularly vulnerable. And it's a huge safety risk to their mental and physical well-being. So we promote awareness sessions that address concerns on student wellness days, drama festivals, diversity events. We got a lot of online resources there. And it's a particular emphasis that we continue to need to make with our school populations. Roots of Empathy is a program focused on reducing the levels of aggression among school children, K to 8, while raising social and emotional competence and increased empathy. It involves having infants into the physical classroom, and they are integrated in those sessions. Wellness days, we have school wellness days that have been used to promote positive mental health, anti-bullying, healthy lifestyles, and other relevant issues. To be most effective, schools have worked with the district staff to develop those days that reflect issues in the individual school's growth and development plan. We also have some social and emotional learning curriculum that the district has been working with the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development to integrate into the classroom. For example, there's a program called PATHS, promotion of alternate thinking strategies, and that covers 5 domains of social emotional development in K to 6, which are self-control, emotional understanding, positive self-esteem, relationships, and interpersonal problem-solving skills. So there's quite a bit that we're doing with respect to social and emotional learning. We believe strongly that these programs are of help, but it is important to recognize that there's work to be done. There's still work to do, and it is a particular focus right now. In terms of healthy eating, there's a number of district initiatives. We have guidelines that are distributed to schools, and we do promote them. Compliance is a bit of a challenge sometimes. Monitoring the multitude of different service options and providers that are out there can present issues. So we rely heavily on our 5 school health promotion liaison consultants to push information out to schools around these guidelines and suggestions for healthy eating. We have a draft nutrition policy that we have shared with the provincial government. Under the Premier's Task Force, the healthy nutrition policy will be a government document that must come out as part of their program, and we're still in ongoing discussions with the department about these draft guidelines. There's new school food guidelines that were developed this summer. The district and government partners formed a committee, and there are 11 schools that are piloting these guidelines this school year, and the new guidelines will be implemented next year. We're working on new Healthy Students, Healthy School website. Our annual planner that we distribute to administrators directs schools to review school menus and content in vending machines, and we are working to develop a standard contract for food service providers. In the area of student transportation, of course, we had a good kickoff with our bus safety program, and that was well received. We thank all the trustees and all of the schools for tweeting that and sharing that information. I think we did make a difference and hopefully contributed to the overall safety of our student population. There are some 40-something thousand students driving on buses each and every day. So our transportation division is working to align a lot of the policies and protocols of the 4 former districts. We do have, I believe, an incredible safety record when you consider that in 2018-2019, there were 7 million kilometers traveled while transporting students to and from school, and over 200,000 daily routes driven, and there were no major student injuries, thank God, and there were fewer than 5 minor injuries. So we've gone above and beyond legislative requirements to ensure the mechanical safety of buses, top-notch preventative maintenance program, and a number of actions to ensure all drivers are appropriately vetted and trained. In terms of driver standards, recently developed formal driver standards for both district-operated and contracted services. And part of a broader student transport documentation management system, we will streamline and automate that documentation of driver certification this year. Beginning as far back as 2016, we did things like withholding payments to contractors who didn't have all their required documentation or hadn't completed this mandatory training. We do recognize that the vast majority of our contractors are very good contractors and work closely with us, but sometimes that type of measure is necessary. In terms of training, the special emphasis on driver training, many of the contractors provided various training programs to their drivers, even though it wasn't required. Another sets of mandatory training include first aid, CPR, EpiPen. We use the online safe pupil modules to educate our drivers. And we've introduced a number of years ago the emergency school bus evacuation drills, which have a total of 213 of 226 schools right now have it completed in 2018, 2019, and we're looking at 100% this year. As well, although the Board of Trustees had not approved the Student Transportation Division Risk Register at the time, a number of years ago. We've still been operating this as a blueprint for success going forward. The risk mitigation strategy is to develop risks in those areas and relate back to the risk register. The district risk management program implementation continues. We have checklists and database. We're using GPS technology now. We purchased that for the fleet for this school year, and we're in discussions with the department as to possible use with contractors. All right, next slide. So all of that is a significant emphasis in the transportation area. Next slide. One of the other things that we have to worry about and be cognizant of is there's a number of different student trips that occur in a given year, and these folks are going and learning and experiencing the world, but there have to be safe parameters put around them. We're also looking at safeguarding instructional time, so we want to encourage minimal actual classroom time missed to achieve these. We've got standards now with respect to chaperones, adherence to special travel warnings that may be issued. We now insist that if students are going to travel, that there must be the purchase of a global travel protection plan in the event that there is a serious situation that emerges somewhere on the globe, that we can adjust the course without impacting parents financially. And there's a number of educator-learner opportunities for teachers with this group called EF Tours in particular. So the other options, we're also looking at outlining a payment program that'll make travel more affordable so as many students as possible can participate. Another initiative that I should alert you to, we're particularly happy with this. We've noticed that it's nice to have a connection with pre-service teachers. So to that end, the district will be providing 2 days of professional learning with Memorial University pre-service teachers in the Faculty of Education. One will occur in November for grades 7 to 12, some 68 teachers. And after Christmas, we'll be focusing in the K-6 area with another 110. The Associate Director of Education, Ed Walsh, will be welcoming students. And we'll do a session on assessment, evaluation, and reporting. And we'll also introduce our pre-service teachers to our program specialists. We'll work with them in the area of math, English, French, etc. And finally, I'd like to conclude with this. As you may be aware, we've talked about this before. We've embarked on a particularly interesting journey with Dr. Michael Fullen, world-renowned researcher in the area of deep learning and coherence. He spent a day and a half with us in August, and since then we've been corresponding with him. I've designated Ms. Georgina Lake as the lead for this initiative. We're sending a delegation to the National Conference in Toronto later this month around the area of student engagement to create a culture of learning and well-being in our system. We are poised to receive a team from Dr. Fullen probably in the new year. We're looking at a 3-year rollout. And it'll involve members initially of my directors, principal advisory group, our family of schools directors, and we intend to we're close to 35% of our school systems to be the initial launch for this partnership with Dr. Fullen. So this is, we're particularly proud of this initiative, very grateful for Dr. Fullen's support. This is, I should also mention that there'll be a delegation that on the heels of the event in Toronto, we've liaised with Ottawa Catholic School Board, and Ottawa Catholic is recognized as one of the world leaders in deep learning, and a small delegation will join a Finnish and U.S. delegation led by Georgina to participate with their lead and visit a few schools over a couple of days and try to extract as much knowledge as we can about the success of the Ottawa Catholic Initiative. So, subject to your questions, Mr. Chair, that is the Director's report.
Yep. Thank you, Tony, for the detail of the report, and obviously it covers a wide spectrum, and I think it reflects the nature of our district, that there are so many different burning issues that take place in a district of the size of ours, with over 260 odd schools, and the population of students that we have. So there are a lot of moving parts, but we are able to make sure that we deal with the moving parts. Any questions around the table from the trustees associated with Trustee Gill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tony, where can I find the guidelines that are being used in the 11 schools for the pilot program? For the healthy food.
Healthy food?
Yeah.
Ed can provide that.
Okay. Thank
Give
you.
you a link.
Any further questions associated with the Director's report? Hearing none, thank you, Tony. Next item on our agenda is our committee reports. We have 3 in terms of the Executive Committee, Finance and Operations, and Programs and Human Resources. The executive report, as one of his last final duties, will be delivered by our previous Vice Chair, Mr. Wayne Lee.
God, it sounds morbid or somber or something. Right. I'll be working from the minutes of the Executive Committee meeting of October the 4th. They're in your kit. There will be one motion in addition to the motion to accept the report. The motion is as follows: that the Board approve the recommendation of the Executive Committee to utilize up to $2.7 million in funds at its disposal, including restricted surplus, to acquire and implement a new financial management system to help deal with issues raised in the Auditor General's report of September 2018. I so move, begging a seconder from the committee. Lester seconds. With that, I would not open debate, but I would defer to the Chief Financial Officer to speak to the issue, with your permission.
Thank you. We just do need to make a slight amendment to that motion as reflected, and you saw in my trustee update that went out on Friday that government has been having some discussions, obviously, with us about this, because there is a shared services proposal on the table from government, and what we've negotiated based on our practice, because we've been studying this for over 2 years, trying to come up with a system or enhance our system that we have today that meets the needs, that will meet the Auditor General's requirements. And the board prior to this has already prioritized and made the decision that we were going to go with Kayenta. So what in dialogue with the province over the last number of days that we've come up with, because we need to move forward, and because we've got a program that will meet our requirements going into the future, over the next 3 months, up until the end of January 31st, the Combined Services or Shared Services Unit is going to be doing a deep dive evaluation on whether they can meet the needs of the district prior to the end of January. So if by the end of January the the Shared Services program within the government, they cannot come up with a viable supply of the needs that we have for our piece, then the board, through this motion, will initiate this activity to purchase the program as of January 31st. So the amendment that is required to the motion is the same motion that we will move forward, subject to the completion of a justifiable study through shared services that meets our requirement. If not, on January 31st, we will move forward and purchase Kayenta and move forward in that direction. Any questions around the table? Peter.
Yes, Chair, I have a couple of questions, actually, regarding the process these decisions were made. And one question I have, just for point of clarification, apparently, and I could have missed this, where in the minutes did we approve as a board that we were going to go with Kayenta? I know we had a presentation on it, but I don't remember a motion saying that we were going to go with it.
And Terry could speak to this better than me, but I do know that the action plan was approved by the board, and we can research when that actually occurred. But as part of the action plan was the purchase of an enterprise system, of a financial management system that was included in that proposal that went to government and has been waiting approval pending a shared services review. Terry, do you have anything to add to that?
That's correct, Tony. There's been 2 instances where we actually sent up to government. The most recent was the large proposal in October 2018 that included a 40-odd page proposal, discussed how we got to the point of selecting Kayenta as an ERP that we wanted to go with when we sent up investigating or inquiring whether they had the funding in the next budget go-around to provide us to acquire that software. So it was in the October 29, 2018 was the proposal that was done and presented to the board at the time, that was endorsed and then formally sent up under letter to the department.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, because I sort of missed it. I know there's been a lot of discussion on it, and I want to commend Terry and the staff for a great job on that. But I have a second question related to that. As the chair of the Finance and Operations Committee, I have a fiduciary responsibility outlined in the bylaws to be more engaged in a process like this. I had requested last Friday to attend a meeting that the executive was going to hold with government, and I was told during that meeting that you would get back to me, that government had made the request for the executive. I had asked if I could be included. I never got a response, or even a return phone call to say sorry, you can't go or whatever. Who made the decision that I couldn't participate in that meeting?
Okay, so when the process that took place is government asked us for a meeting and they suggested the executive of the board be present at that meeting. That was their determination. On Friday of last weekend, we had a study session of the full board. The way the board makes decisions, and you're familiar with this, the full board makes a decision. It's not an individual. Group decision is made, and then we move forward with that group decision. On Friday of last week at our study session, you did request opportunity to come along with us on that meeting. It was Friday afternoon. I was unsuccessful in getting an answer to that, and the meeting went ahead on Monday. Now, did I not call you? That's correct. I didn't call you, but also, too, there was an opportunity for you to give me a call to get an update as well on that.
Chair, I contacted you a couple of times to find out if the meeting had gone ahead or not. I made the request. In fact, I requested 3 times that just to get information on this. I just don't understand how, when I've been given a fiduciary responsibility by members of this board to carry out those responsibilities. We have a finance committee, and it was a simple request. I just would have liked to have been engaged a little more on it. That's all.
Sorry, thank you, Peter. And out of that, there was a request whether, because when questions like this get asked, it's a question of whether we've not met our bylaw commitments and all those pieces associated with this. I have gone back, obviously, as I said I would do in that study session, ask for our legal interpretation of whether the executive did fulfill its mandate in the appropriate fashion, and I have just received a copy of their component, which does validate the process that we had followed in this particular circumstance. But I will share that with you.
Which process are we talking about?
We're talking about the fact that the executive had taken on this particular role on the financial management package with government and interacted with government. So on that particular piece, we have followed our responsibilities to meet our own guidelines and bylaws on that piece. Trustee Burden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, and for no other reason only than for clarification. I don't understand the relationship that we have with government on this particular file and this particular piece of financing. It seems like, and especially with the amendment that's going to come to the motion, it seems like we've kind of issued an ultimatum and there's 90 days and we're going to do this anyway. So if government come back and recommend another system other than what this motion reflects, where do we go then? Do we say that we're the authority and we know best? And I'm not trying to make this any more than it is, but I don't understand the relationship with government here.
That's a very good question, Scott. This process with government is a cooperative approach. They are not telling us how we've got to react. They're not telling us that this is the best or that is the best. That was the dialogue at the table. The only thing that does, this, to get this right is absolutely vital for the students in our system. There's no question about that. There's no other school board the size of ours in our country that is involved in governmental shared services and the supply of this kind of activity to the district. So that there are high-level risks. We've come out, and I'm explaining the relationship. So we've come out of 2.5 years of study by our professional staff to come up with a solid recommendation of a path forward. Government recognized that. But sometimes when you have two different organizations, and I'm not speaking for government, but they have a bigger picture requirement in terms of trying to, obviously the fiscal relationships or fiscal circumstance of the province as we see today is in a tough place. So they want to make sure that when we're expending money, that it does fit in with the global picture. What they've said to us in a cooperative fashion, because they don't want us to take on a service that doesn't meet the needs of the district. They want to spend it's through dialogue that this came out, Scott. It's not an ultimatum or it's not anything like that. It's just a cooperative dialogue that expresses a keen concern that come January 31st, we want to be able to be in a position that we're moving forward with something that does meet the requirements of the English School District of Newfoundland and Labrador. And what they've accepted is that they need to do a deeper dive within their shared services program in a short period of time in order to ascertain whether it can. And they've given us their commitment that they will support us at the end of that date, of that timeline, with us moving forward with whichever is the best circumstance. And it's up to us to determine what the best circumstance, and that's the cooperative approach that they've extended to us. If they come back and demonstrate clearly on January 31st that shared services can meet all the requirements that we have, and on the fiscal component of that, it's equally as expensive or less expensive, or whichever is more financially viable, which system, then we have a different decision. But if they don't do that, they're accepting that there's a requirement that we've got to get on and do some of the stuff that we have to do under the piece. So from that point of view, it's a cooperative approach. It's not an ultimatum. It was and the executive of that particular time at the table will be able to tell you that it was a dialogued approach in order to come out with a solution. So we've got some players around the table. We do have Jennifer. We do have Wayne. If you would like to have just a quick...
Just for clarity, what I understood you saying is at the end of this process in January, government is going to come back with its recommendation. The district is going to have, or government's going to come back with a position from their investigative work. They're going to have information to share. This motion is going to give the district or the board the ability to do what they want to, but ultimately the ball is in the board's court, is what I heard you say.
Yes, but again, I have to emphasize this is a cooperative approach. I
understand that.
So if they come back with a shared services proposal that clearly identifies that it can meet all the requirements that have been expressed under the AG directives to us and all that within a financially acceptable envelope, then there'd be a requirement for the board to revisit. If that doesn't happen, then the board has, through cooperative agreement, the ability to just move forward with Kayenta, and that's what this motion is about. Moving to Trustee Aspel.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My question, I guess, is kind of partially answered when you said if they determine that the shared services can meet all of the requirements of the AG report. So my question is really, what are they basing their analysis on? And if they come back and say that they can meet the requirements, but we feel differently, where do we go from there?
Okay. Perhaps I wasn't, and I accept that. Perhaps I wasn't as clear as I should have been within this. And I think Trustee Burton did allude to it. The ball is in our court on this. Okay? So they just want their opportunity to do a deep dive on shared services to see if they can meet the requirements that have been outlined, such as the requirements that are being met in Kayenta by the end of the 30. They have not said, we're going to tell you whether we think we've met them or not. They're going to outline what their deep dive results are, at which point we will have the opportunity, which was clearly outlined in that meeting by the minister, that at that time we can move forward with Kayenta if we think that that's the approach to go. Okay. Trustee Lee.
Yeah, perhaps we could have fleshed out a bit more, but as we said on the Skype conference call, Terry and his team had spent some time delivering a package that was thorough and well thought out and well researched, and Granway provided the delivery of that. to the point where not only was the minister present, but quite a number of highly qualified officials from his staff were there, and there were no objections to the meat of the order at all. The only concern was, and a concern we expected and agreed with, a general financial concern for the state of the province. So they were essentially on side with it, but did ask us for the opportunity to possibly provide an alternative, and if not, we will go ahead with what we've decided to do. So the meeting was respectful and cooperative, and I must commend both Terry and Gronway on the way it was handled. And right now, it's looking like we may be able to address a very big problem that we had an awful lot of trouble with before.
Sorry, any further questions? Hearing none, can I, the motion's already tabled, it's seconded, and the amendment is there. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Does that conclude the... Turn on the...
That the board approve the executive committee report of October 24th, 2019 as presented. I so move.
Seconded by Lester. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carries. Thank you for that, Wayne. Next order of business is the Finance and Ops Committee report. Trustee Whittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like to, this is our last meeting, October 16th, 2019. There was one motion referred to the board for approval. It's with regards to the budget for 2019-20. Mr. Terry Hall, our CFO ADE Corporate Services, provided the schedule summarizing the operating budget for the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District for the period July 1st to June 30th, 2020. So that's July 1st, 2019. The budget does not reflect capital funding, special incentive, or special project funding from the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development or the Nunatuxet government funding, nor does it reflect schools' controlled funds or the operations of the Newfoundland and Labrador Education Foundation. Mr. Hall highlighted the material items that gave rise to the variances in the grant budgets year over year. And he also noted that expenses were budgeted to better align with where actual expenditures have been over the last couple of years. There was a brief discussion and some clarification through questions were addressed. The Schools Act 1997 requires school districts to balance its budget each fiscal year. The proposed budget for the 12-month period ending June 30th, 2020 is indeed balanced. The budget is presented and reflects the most current operating grant from the department for this period. So the motion is that the board approve the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District's balanced operating budget for the 12-month period from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 as recommended by the Finance and Operations Committee. I'd like to move that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Whittle. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Kendall. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion carries. Thank you.
There were some discussion items that we discussed at the meeting. The first one was the impact of the shared services for financial management versus a standalone system for the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District. Once again, Mr. Hall provided a brief commentary on what moving to the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador's core financial management system means and how it addresses concerns in the Auditor General's report versus going to a fully integrated standalone system as has been proposed. Trustee Aspel provided commentary in support of past proposals to acquire a fully integrated standalone system to run as a school district. Further discussions are to be held with the entire board. Mr. Hall has also noted it is not common practice, or it is common practice, standard across Canada that school districts operate on its own systems and not on core government systems. The next discussion was about student transportation and the 1.6 kilometer rule. Trustee Aspel highlighted that there are a number of items, including this one, that have an impact on the delivery of education, and keeping attention on them is really to determine how the board can enact change if required. Other items proposed for review were cap size, IRTs, guidance allocations. It was acknowledged that these are mostly policy-driven outside our board's control. Mr. Hall suggested that the items could be addressed and requested as part of the budget process. Trustee Lee reiterated that the budget process is probably the best avenue to request these changes. All other trustees agreed with the principle of the items raised by Trustee Aspel. And the last topic of discussion during that meeting was trustee and staff per diem rates. It was acknowledged that trustees are voluntary positions and that established government of Newfoundland and Labrador per diems are not enough to cover basic meals and on a regular basis, trustees end up out of pocket to attend meetings throughout the year. Mr. Hall acknowledged that there are established rates and there appears to be no mechanism in place for the district to establish its own rates in this situation, but it will be researched. Trustee Aspel highlighted that she thought district executive staff should not be out of pocket for the frequent travel that they do on behalf of the district either. Trustee Culleton asked if it was something that could be done through a budget request. So there's a motion now, if there's discussions after, I guess. I'd like to move that the board approve the Finance and Operations Committee report of October 16th, 2019, as presented.
Thank you, Peter. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Eric. Discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Those against? Motion carries. Thank you very much for that. The third committee is our Program and HR Committee, which was chaired by Trustee Cavan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only motion coming forward from this is the motion to approve the report. I wish to draw your attention to the committee work plan, which was in your packages. It's enormous. It shows you the amount of work that this committee has completed, and I want to congratulate our staff who've done the groundwork and the yeoman work on these issues and these policies. At this particular meeting, besides the work plan, there were 6 items of discussion. The first one being the hazing program. And we received a presentation from Mr. Robert Lehman about the hazing program. It's currently a grade 7 to 12 initiative. The Newfoundland Labrador English School District has partnered with the Department of Children, Seniors and Social Development, School Sport NL and Sport NL in developing the program, and this was spoken of by Mr. Stack in the Director's report. The second item on our list that day was an update on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Service Plan. We were advised of the recent hiring of Mrs. Darlene Fewer-Jackson for the Director of Programs, Deaf and Hard of Hearing position. We have been notified the district will be partnering with the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development, the Newfoundland Labrador Association for the Deaf and the Atlantic Province Special Education Authority to develop a steering committee to oversee the development of initiatives to address programming challenges for deaf and hard of hearing students. The first meeting of this committee was held on Thursday, October 17th. While the steering committee further develops a mandate, the district is moving forward with several initiatives, including having a cohort of students attend APC facilities early in the new year to avail of short-term programming. And the district is also in the process of developing a provincial professional learning opportunity for all deaf and hard of hearing itinerant teachers. And I believe this was referenced to us this morning by the Minister. We had an update on the No Finals pilot. Mr. Walsh updated the committee on this policy. There are currently 15 schools who signed up for the pilot. However, there has been significant inquiries from the system with schools and school communities seeking information, so there may be many more. We had a look at the performance appraisal for probationary teachers. We held that discussion. The revised position description for directors of schools now place responsibility for performance appraisals with that position. Mr. Walsh advised the committee that there are more than 200 teachers in probationary contracts this year. We were advised by Ms. Georgina Lake about the PASS program. It's been in our system for a number of years, and now it's taken on sort of a better life, if you like. Ms. Lake is the Director of Education Student Services. And the PASS program involves things like credit rescue, where a student is at risk of failing a course, can get time to rescue that credit. Credit recovery, which would include students who fail a course that can go back and get it. New course registration for those students who've missed the course along the way, and there's a way to get that before they graduate. Those are the three main items. It's aimed at students who are vulnerable of dropping out and are early school leavers. So we're trying to keep more kids in school, being more successful. The PASS program does that for us. The program is currently offered at select schools across the province. Other items of discussion were the French policy update and the update on political activity for trustees. Both of those policies will be ready for the November meeting of this committee. That is the report. I move that the Board approve the Programs and Human Resource Committee report of October 17 as presented.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Seconded by Trustee Burden. Any questions? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, next item on the order of business is we can skip from 7.1 to 7.4 because there are no reports. So 7.5 is our annual report, which is going to be presented by Susan Tobin, and I would ask her to initiate the process. Thank you. Susan, sorry. The volume does not seem to be on your mic, or I'm... Okay, so that's going to be an issue. You're going to have to come up to the front and do the piece. Sorry about that. The reason why this is so critical is that we have people at home that are paying attention through the home option for viewing, so...
Hello? Can you hear me? I don't think it's on. Test, test. Okay. The annual report that's been in your board package is year 2 of the strategic plan, and it covers the year 2018-19. So from September 1st till June 30th, that's the reporting period. Highlights from the annual report were covered and presented in the September meeting of the Director's Report. So as in previous years, the draft report in your package has been submitted to the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development for review. If there are any substantial changes that are coming back from the department, it will be brought back to the board. So today, as in previous years, we are going to ask for your conditional approval in principle of the draft annual report.
Okay, so we've obviously had this supplied to us prior to, and we've had the opportunity to go down through it. So I'm going to turn the floor to our Vice Chair, Trustee Blake, to introduce a motion of an acceptance of the draft.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move a motion that we accept the annual report as presented in our package.
Do I have a seconder to the motion? Seconded by Steve Tessier. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Okay. Thank you very much, Susan. Let me get back into organization. Okay. No, I'm not answering that. Next item on our agenda is the school review. We're back to Doug and going through the recommended school review pieces for this year.
Thank you, and good afternoon, trustees, members of the public. What we're going to be seeing now is a list of potential school systems for review. It's important to note that in the list that we see here, we're going to be looking at full systems as part of the potential reviews that take place. The first potential system for review is the Marystown Central High system. Here we see a geographic map showing the 4 schools that make up this system. Here we see the feeder system and the grade level configuration for each of these schools involved. Here we have some demographic information and preliminary numbers. The next system is the Stephenville High system in Zone 6. Here we see the map showing the location of the schools involved. There are 6 schools in this system. Here we have the grade level configuration and the feed system. It's important to note here that the Pathfinder Learning Center is a school that contains 23 students doing a education program there that enables them to achieve graduation. Here's some information about the schools involved in this system. The next potential system for review is Dorset Collegiate in Zone 7. We see the location of the schools involved. We see that this is a single feed system involving 3 schools. Here we see the grade level configuration and the information on these schools. Glovertown Academy in Zone 9. See the location of the 2 schools. So you can see the grade level configuration here. Charlottetown Primary is K-3, which feeds into another K-12 school. See the information on these schools. Next potential system for review. This one is actually a dual system. There are 2 systems here that are very close to each other. We see the Phoenix Academy system, which includes Sandstone Academy and the nearby Gill Memorial Academy. We see that Sandstone Academy is a K to 6 that feeds into Phoenix Academy, which is a K to 12. The other system that is nearby is the Gill Memorial Academy. And it's important to note that this potential system for review includes both of these school systems together. Here we see the information on these schools. This is a list of all 5 potential systems for review, and including all of the schools. The numbers that you see on the right-hand side indicate the current enrollment at each of these schools. That is the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Doug, for your work in the presentation. I'm going to turn the floor over to Vice Chair again to present the motion for consideration.
Again, so I want to thank the district staff for the preliminary work that's been done with this particular activity. I'd like to propose the following motion. The Board of Trustees directs the district staff to conduct the following school reviews for potential catchment realignment, grade level reconfiguration.
Can I just stop for 1 second? We've made a big step forward in the way we approach reviews now, and the whole full table of the trustees have done it. And we're having a challenge within our own ranks to reflect that in the words that this is not a specific school review, it's a system review, and we might have made that error in that time. So it should be a system review. So the idea for the people that are at home looking and doing this, what we want to do is look at the whole system in order to determine, A, is there anything that we could possibly do through restructuring that improves programming in that system? Is there anything that needs to happen in that system to accommodate students and student learning over the next 20 years or so to make sure that we make a decision that has legs for life in those particular circumstances? So we're wrestling with our terminology in-house. So when we say school review, it really is system review at this stage of the game. And as we go through system review, there may be some changes. There may be some school closures, but there also may be then result school closures with new school requirements in order to meet the needs over the next number of years. So all these are being looked at as it fits into the overall system, which is a good thing. So sorry about interrupting Hayward, but where you heard school, it's system review.
I'll forgive you this time. I'll repeat and start again. I'll make the following motion, that the Board of Trustees directs the district staff to conduct the following system reviews for potential catchment realignment, grade level reconfiguration, and/or closure as applicable. And I'll do them in the order that they appeared on the screen. Zone 10, Marystown Central High School System, pertaining to Donald C. Jameson Academy, grades K to 7, Sacred Heart Academy, grades K to 7, Pierce Junior High, grades 8 and 9, and Marystown Central High, grades 10 to 12. Zone 6, Stephenville High School System, pertaining to Stephenville Primary, grades K to 3, Stephenville Elementary, grades 4 and 5, Stephenville Middle School, grades 6 to 8, St. Thomas Aquinas, grades K to 8, Pathfinder Learning Center, grades 10 to 12, and Stephenville High, grades 9 to 12. Zone 7, Dorset Collegiate School System, pertaining to Brian Peckford Primary, grades K to 3, Green Bay South Academy, grades K to 6, and Dorset Collegiate, grades 7 to 12. Zone 9, Glovertown Academy School System, pertaining to Charlottetown Primary, grades K to 3, and Glovertown Academy, grades K to 12. And Zone 9, Phoenix Academy and Gill Memorial Academy School Systems, pertaining to Sandstone Academy, grades K to 6, Phoenix Academy, grades K to 12, and Gill Memorial Academy, grades K to 12.
Thank you, Hayward, for that. Do I hear a seconder to the motion? Seconded by Trustee Ayers. Any further questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Those against? Motion carries. Thank you very much for that, and thank you again, as Hayward had alluded to, the work that our staff does. This is a very time-consuming process, so that's why we have to get it organized in such a way that we can actually chew as much as we can bite off. Next item on the agenda is the review of correspondence, and the way we do that is everyone has a listing around the table of the correspondence in and out, and if anyone has any questions with regard to a certain piece of correspondence, we're certainly open to have that dialogue, as we always are. Any, okay, Peter has a question regarding?
Yeah, just two quick questions, if you could clarify them for me. The first is with regards to the request by the Public Accounts Committee to go over the last two reports from the AG. Are trustees going to be invited to attend that like the last meeting, or what's the plan?
Over the last 2 weeks, everything has been coming fast and furious, as you can well imagine, and the Public Accounts Committee did want us to meet. The days are blistering on me now, but I believe it was last Tuesday, and we'd already had a meeting set up with our NLTA under the new collective agreement that had been on the books for a while. So correspondingly, we reflected with the Public Accounts Committee that we had a challenge on that day, and they came back with the cancellation of the Public Accounts Committee. They are now wrestling with a new date, and I would suspect, if I was a seer, which I'm not, that it might be in December that the dates would come up. I see no change in the protocol that was there. The challenge, and just for the table, most of the time when it's like this, the ones that are closer that can get to will have to, will have to represent the greater position of the board, in terms of participation. This one is a different public accounts request than the last one because it's reflecting on those two other reports associated with fitness and so associated with food. And they want to revisit what our action plan, what we've done based on our last AG report. So from my point of view, that's their job to do that, and we certainly will do what we have to do on our side to answer the questions that they have for us.
Thanks for the clarification. Yeah, I look forward to attending that PAC meeting. The other question is just regards to a response to Mr. Todd Churchill on October 21st. There's a great outline of the activities that we've taken, and I think Kevin covered a lot of that earlier. Just had one question. Towards the bottom of the letter, we talk about a steering committee that we're setting up. Just wondering if that steering committee is met yet, and who's on it, I guess.
Okay, obviously there's a lot of activity that takes place in the district on an ongoing basis, and this is not a highlighted component. So I'm going to turn over to Tony to give us an update on that.
I'm going to defer to Georgina, but I do believe that meeting did occur on October 17th. Or Ed.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, an initial meeting has occurred with representatives from the Newfoundland Labrador Association for the Deaf and the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. At that meeting, a number of items were discussed relative to the mandate of the steering committee itself. There are other representatives that the department was seeking out to serve on that steering committee, including representation from APSI, and I believe some representation from the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association. As I understand it, there's a meeting tentatively scheduled for early in November for the full steering committee to meet.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Peter. And I also think the minister this morning at our session alluded to the same thing. So it's not something that's not on his agenda either. Okay, any further questions regarding correspondence? Trustee Blake.
Yes, I'd like to direct your attention to 8.4, the letter from Eastern Regional Services Board to the Minister. I've had some contact from some schools that are concerned that we have schools where paper, I believe, is not being recycled. And I think there's been some correspondence that's been coming through email as well to us. Is this something we can speak to, or?
Yeah, we can speak to that. Yeah, Terry, you can. You know, some of the things that are contained in that letter we were a little bit surprised about. There are some difficulties around this. I mean, we've offered, in fact, the source of that letter, there was a number of contracts that they did not want to renew for recycling. But we're fully, whichever ones that they would like to enter into, we're willing to do. But Terry, go ahead.
Tony, that's it right now in a nutshell, as you described. We have been working with them. They had a number of schools that they were doing over the past year, and when it came time to renew, they actually didn't want to renew them all. That's why this letter was a bit of a surprise. The other little thing we're working on here is there's certain areas in the province where this stuff is happening, but it's been mandated in the region, like the regional municipality has mandated recycling, so it becomes a program. Mm-hmm. In this particular area, it's not actually mandated right now, so it becomes a little more difficult, like from a regional point of view, a little more difficult to get into. But we're willing to deal with it, and we were actually a little surprised. They dropped some of the schools because we thought they were going to be looking for more. And we are always about, recycling and those types of things. So we are pushing it.
Yeah, just to elaborate on the mandated piece. When the service board mandates recycling, what that means is that other entities would be involved. So there's a critical mass of other entities that are in proximity to a school, and then it makes it viable for them to go and collect. So I would, we were advising the Service Board for Eastern Region, maybe they might want to think about mandated recycling, and then that would make it more of a possibility for us.
Thank you, Tony and Terry. Any further questions associated with the correspondence? Hearing none, the next order of business is going to be a motion to adjourn to closed. And what we do at this stage is we'll stop and take a break for a few minutes while we get all set up for a closed meeting. I'm going to quickly defer to Scott for a second.
Yeah, just before we do that, Mr. Chair, we're fresh out of an AGM, as we're all aware, and the standing committees have yet had a chance to convene. And it's a possibility that the chairs that chaired the committees the last year or so won't be returning as chairs. So as a member of the Programs and HR Committee, I'd like to thank Kevin for his service over the last 12 months. Outstanding work, and of course, great support from Mr. Walsh and his staff, but I certainly thank you for your service, sir, and if you decide not to seek to become the chair, I certainly appreciate what you've done.
Thank you, Scott. Any further? Without that, can I entertain a motion to adjourn to closed? Moved by Peter, seconded by Lester. All in favor? Okay, thank you.